All right, let's get right into it. Today, we're tackling a story that didn't just rock the AI world, it sent an absolute earthquake through the stock market. It's a deal so huge, it's got this trillion-dollar question mark hanging right over it that has everyone talking.
So how did we know something massive was going down? Well, look at this. AMD stock just explodes. We're talking a nearly 36% jump. When you see a number like that, you know the game has just changed. Big time.
Okay, so we have to break this down. A jump like that doesn't just happen. What in the world was the trigger? And, more importantly, what does it mean for this crazy, high-stakes fight for who's going to rule the world of AI?
Well, the trigger for this whole financial earthquake? It was this blockbuster deal, a huge infrastructure agreement between AMD, the chip maker, and OpenAI, the folks who gave us ChatGPT. And believe me, this wasn't just some standard partnership. This was a monster.
So at its core, here's what's going on. It's a multi-year agreement for AMD to give OpenAI a mind-boggling amount of data center capacity. We're talking about the actual physical stuff that makes the AI revolution run, the very foundation. And just to give you a sense of scale here, we're talking about 6 gigawatts of power. 6? That's literally enough juice to power a decent-sized city. And every single watt of it is going to be used for running AI.
Okay, so let's get into the nitty-gritty of how this whole thing is supposed to work. Because, on the surface, it seems pretty simple. But when you start peeling back the layers, that's where it gets really interesting. And, yeah, kind of complicated. All right, so for AMD, the win is obvious, right? They're looking at tens of billions of dollars in revenue. For OpenAI, the carrot is this massive potential stake in AMD, almost 10% of the company, through something called stock warrants. Basically, it's the right to buy stock later at a set price. It really seems like a perfect win-win, doesn't it? Well, not so fast. Because the way this whole thing is put together is, let's just say it's not normal. It is definitely not your standard, I give you hardware, you give me stock kind of thing. Oh no, there is a catch, and it is a big one. And this is it. This is the big mystery at the heart of the whole deal. The trillion-dollar question that has every analyst and investor scratching their heads is, where is OpenAI going to get the money for this? How on earth are they going to pay for their side of this gigantic promise? See, here's how it actually works, and this is the key. AMD isn't just giving them stock warrants for free. No way. First, OpenAI has to go out and spend its own cash to build the first gigawatt of data center space. It's only after they hit that spending target that AMD will hand over the first batch of those valuable warrants. Now, if this sounds weird, that's because it is. Just think about OpenAI's other big deal with NVIDIA. In that one, NVIDIA actually got a piece of OpenAI. That whole thing raised eyebrows about circular financing. The idea that NVIDIA might be funding OpenAI just so OpenAI could turn around and buy NVIDIA's chips. But this AMD deal, it's the complete opposite. OpenAI has to show up with its own wallet first. And that brings us right back to that massive question, because you have to remember, this AMD deal is just one piece of the puzzle. OpenAI's total commitments are now somewhere in the ballpark of 26 to 30 gigawatts. That is just an insane amount of infrastructure. So the question remains, and it's a big one, do they actually have the cash to pull this off? And you know what the honest-to-goodness answer is from the experts, the people whose job it is to know this stuff? Don't know. Seriously. Nobody seems to have a clear picture of where the money is coming from. Are they going to raise debt, find new investors? It's just this giant, flashing question mark hovering over the entire deal. Okay, so you might be thinking, if OpenAI's financing is such a big maybe, why would AMD even sign up for this? Well, the answer is simple. For AMD, this deal is their potential golden ticket. Let's be real about the AI chip market for a second. NVIDIA isn't just the leader, they pretty much are the market. It's a literal monopoly. Meanwhile, you've got AMD way back in the distance, basically fighting for the leftovers. If they ever wanted to change that picture, they had to do something huge, something dramatic. And they're aiming for a very specific and super important part of the AI world called inference. Now, inference isn't the heavy-duty work of training a model from scratch, which takes a ton of power. Instead, it's the process of using the AI. When you ask ChatGPT a question or generate an image. That's inference. And that's where most of the AI work is going to happen in the future. And this is where the move from AMD is just brilliant. The deal specifically says that OpenAI has to use all this new AMD gear for inference. Think about that. By getting the biggest name in AI to publicly bet on them for this specific job, AMD is basically shouting to the entire world, hey, look over here. Our stuff might just be the best for this. It's a massive stamp of approval.
So what happened the moment this news broke? Well, it wasn't just a good day for AMD. The announcement sent shockwaves through the entire chip industry. It was a direct challenge to the way things have been for years. And the stock market reacted instantly. It was crystal clear. While AMD's stock was shooting for the moon, what happened to its competitors? Intel's shares dropped, and the big one, NVIDIA, their shares went down too. Wall Street got the message loud and clear. There's a new, serious challenger in town. All right, so let's boil this all down. What do we really need to remember? First, for AMD, this is a huge strategic win in their long fight against NVIDIA. Second, for OpenAI, it's a massive financial risk, a huge bet with a giant question mark about the money. And third, and maybe most importantly, we won't know how this story really ends until those data centers are actually built and switched on. And that leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. What we just saw was a bold move, a risky move, but a move that could change everything. So the real question is, did we just see the very first crack appear in NVIDIA's untouchable AI kingdom? I guess we'll have to wait and see.